What's going on, everyone? Justin again. As always, thanks for watching my channel. Welcome back. Had another video topic that I wanted to talk about this evening, and it's my experience between buying cheap versus buying expensive tools. So for those of you that have been following me for a little while, you already know that when I first started off in community college, I started off with very little money. I did not have enough money to afford some of the more expensive items that were out there. More importantly, I had no idea what these tool brands were, if that makes sense. Like, I knew of Snap-on, and from what I was told, they were the highest, most expensive person to purchase from. But I didn't know what that actually meant, just knew that they were high quality. My mom's former boyfriend was a GM master mechanic, and he had a lot of Snap-on and Mac tools. And you would have thought that he might have shared even a little bit of his experience as far as, like, can a cheaper product make it through it. But as far as I was concerned, the tools to have at that time was Craftsman, and the tools were Snap-on or Mac. I did not know of any Matco. I did not know of any Cornwell. Never even heard of GEARWRENCH at that time. Not until I actually started working at Sears Auto Center did I find out about GEARWRENCH. That was my first experience with hearing about GEARWRENCH. A lot of tool companies that you guys now know of, like Capri, Olsa, Tecton, things like that, and the quality that they're at and the prices that they're at were way different 10 years ago. 10 years ago, when I saw the Tecton tools, it was a bargain bin special at like O'Reilly's or Advanced Auto Parts, and they were like the cheap of the cheap. As far as the creme de la creme, no, not at all. I mean, these things were beat, man. You put it on any fastener, you guaranteed to round it off and break it. Ask me how I know. But getting back to it though, so I started really the majority of my collection off with a mixture between Craftsman tools and Harbor Freight. And also, Harbor Freight was one of those places that I was recently introduced to when I started community college. I met a guy who's a friend of mine. His name was Jamie, and he introduced me to Harbor Freight, and he said, look, man, for like a fraction of the cost, you can pretty much get a large portion of your tool list from this place and not hardly spend anything versus spending what you're spending at Sears or even on the Snap-on truck. And I had not even seen a Snap-on truck at this point in time, but I took his word for it because he'd been wrenching a hell of a lot longer than I had. So I went to Harbor Freight with him, and when I had gotten my initial grant money as well as my VA money, I went to Harbor Freight. I bought a service car. I started following through the tool list that they gave me that was required, and I started picking it off the stuff that I did not have. I did buy some kind of like 500-piece Craftsman set from Sears, so I knew I didn't need sockets or wrenches really because I already had that stuff covered. But a lot of the other stuff like impact screwdrivers, hammers, a toolbox or service cart, I picked that up, pliers, screwdrivers, etc. What I learned initially in the beginning was that going too cheap actually cost me money, not made me money. So in that time frame, Harbor Freight was probably no better than what the Tecton was, but I gave them the benefit of the doubt because they gave you like a 15-day turnaround. So if it broke and it wasn't worth a dang, you could take it back, get your money back, or you could trade it in for something different, etc. So that's kind of where I felt like Harbor Freight was just a little bit above its time frame than Tecton. Tecton was not yet where it is today. Keep that in mind. So at that time, it seemed like it was costing me more money really than it was making me any money because most of these tools would break down. Some of them wouldn't break down until after that 15-day warranty. And then even then, it was like, what are you supposed to do with that, right? So most of them either ended up in the trash can, or I gave them away, or I sold them if they were like still somewhat usable. And then I started going the Snap-on route because the community college that I went to at the time was a Snap-on affiliated program, and we got 50% off discount. And so I ended up starting to buy some of the stuff from Snap-on, and I immediately saw a quality difference between the two, obviously. But look, we're looking at like the most expensive to the very cheapest, right? So there was no mid-range tool in between those two. So I started buying some Snap-on stuff, started off with an RA account, which then led to an actual credit account. And then all of a sudden, Matco kind of came into play. And the Matco representatives showed up to the community college. They started discussing with us their product and their tools, and very impressive. I was very impressed. One of the first tools they showed us was this 3/8 drive teardrop design 88 tooth ratchet that I was telling you guys about. And I fell in love like right away with that damn ratchet. And to this day, I've juggled through different ratchets, and yeah, I have to warranty the gears out like once every 6 to 12 months. But overall, still my favorite design overall for a ratchet, locking flex head. I can't really say enough good things about it, except for the fact that the teeth do wear out, especially if you're using it every single day. I had gotten a couple other things too, like some hammers. I tried out some pry bars and things like that. But they were just barely starting to come in their own. Now, granted, this is 10 years ago, okay? This is 10 years ago. But at that point in time, they were a no-name to me, but they had a tool truck. So I kind of considered them a higher-end, maybe middle-range product at that point in time, because I was like, well, you're not Snap-on, but you're not Craftsman, and you're definitely not Harbor Freight, and your stuff definitely holds up a lot better than a couple of those brands, and you have more teeth count and better quality. At that time, the Craftsman quality was still garbage, okay? We were talking 32 teeth ratchets to an 88 tooth. So I was eagerly ready to get rid of the Craftsman 32 any way, shape, or fashion that I possibly could, and went away from that. That Christmas, that first Christmas back from 2010 going to 2011, I did stumble across a promo deal for a GEARWRENCH ratchet set. This is the one that I still have today. So 10 years running, I got that set for $100. That was a steal at the time, because it was like, to find ratchet wrenches at that price was super hard to do, especially if you were going to buy them off Snap-on or Matco. So I bought them. I gave them a chance. And 10 years later, they all still work. I haven't had not one issue with them. So I got to give them kudos to that. But I think nowadays you can buy that same exact ratchet wrench set that I had gotten for $100 for like $50 on Amazon. I'll put the Amazon affiliate link down in the description. But overall, that was kind of where my curiosity, interest, and respect for GEARWRENCH came into play, was with owning that particular tool for as long as I had and really using it. So mad props to them for that. That's really what kind of turned the anvil for me, if you will. Later on down the road, I would figure out that like the Snap-on toolbox that I had bought, and then I'll throw a little picture down here, and then had to sell this, that, and the other. I learned real quick that, and especially this whole like spending $1,000 in Snap-on sockets, yeah, definitely a waste of money, definitely. Socket's a socket, which we made mention of, right? The ones that are tighter tolerance, they're more geared for the newer bolts. The ones that have less tolerance, that are less quality, they have a bigger gap, they're meant for like sludge, oil, rust, etc. At this point in time, when I had bought in these sockets, I didn't think about all that. All I thought was, well, I got to get the quality, you know, I'm back in business, I better get some Snap-on stuff. But you learn real quick that you don't need that to make it as a mechanic, especially when you're at the lower wages. So being at $10 an hour, it was one of those things where I was like, okay, feast or famine, got to figure out how to be able to afford the tools for the job without having to buy the high-end stuff, and which of those products are going to work out well enough for me to make it a year, 2 years, etc. down the road. So I started going back to Harbor Freight, I started going to Home Depot, I started going to Lowe's, Tractor Supply, O'Reilly's, AutoZone. I started eating it up, right? Like there's got to be other products out here that can be of equal quality that can do the same exact thing. And that really helped me to learn how I can manage my money when I really didn't have a lot of money to spend on these tools. to actually be able to afford my living and my job with a family. So that was really something that really put everything back into perspective. Later down the road, as my income would increase, as my pay scale went up, as I got retired, and these things started happening, then I was able to start stepping back into Snap-on, but I didn't do it the same way that I did initially in the beginning. Or in the beginning, I was just buying whatever I could possibly get my hands on because, well, not only could I put on a payment plan, but also I knew that the quality was going to be there, right? Well, you don't have to have every single thing Snap-on in order for the quality to be there, but it did take a decade for these companies to figure it out, to make it to where the tool did hold up longer and wasn't so cheap that you were going to have to either trade it back in less than 15 days or bring it back a few months later within that warranty period. So they definitely made a lot of changes along the way, not just at Harbor Freight, but you got these new companies too that have stepped up their game, Tecton step up their game, etc. So it's like they're making it more affordable, but they're also bringing the quality up. They're keeping the price low, but they're bringing the quality up. Snap-on's still going to just raise the hell out of the price. That's just what it is, right? But, you know, of the recent purchases that I've made between the welding station, some of the cordless tools, one slide hammer puller set, and some open-end wrenches, one of the things that I was actually talking with Jay Young about the other night was that the reason why I decided to go with the open-end wrenches with Snap-on over anyone else, low or mid-range alike, was the fact that I can trust that with an open end, if I'm going to use it as an open end, that the Snap-on quality is going to be there to the point where it's not going to flex and splay open. With the mid-range products, with the cheap products, it's going to splay open. It's going to be a nightmare. And honestly, it's just not going to satisfy you. It's not going to hold up, and you're going to waste your money. There's an expression, buy once, cry once. I don't believe in that for every single purchase. I do believe in that for various purchases. So I was being very selective when it came to actually stepping back into Snap-on with as far as like what products from Snap-on that I either missed or wanted to get them as soon as I possibly could, assuming that they may lose their rep at a later time. So I focused on some of the basic hand tools that I needed, like the open end, angle wrenches. Wanted to get those, absolutely. The welding station that I just showed a video of, not necessarily something for work, but definitely something that I wanted, and I was like, I'm gonna put that on a list. The one thing that I did put on actual credit, which I told myself I'd never go back into Snap-on credit, yeah, here I am in Snap-on credit. The one and only thing that I did put on credit was the Snap-on Zeus, and that's a scan tool that I had purchased with the assumption that if my owner was leaving, I might actually be able to slide into his role and have the same but upgraded platform of a scan tool to where maybe I can be utilized and taught more, and during situations that I can't be taught more, that I could actually use it, and using that intelligent diagnostics, I might be able to just work through my own problem without asking too many questions. This didn't happen, but it wasn't a complete defeater or dissatisfying purchase, because I also know that somewhere within the next 3 to 4 years, I would like to own my own shop. I would like to be able to start working my way towards that in the next year or two and see where it gets me, and maybe I can open a weekend shop. But I would hope that like in 3 to 4 years that I'm actually there and doing it for myself. So having a scan tool and a lab scope is killer important, and they really are like second to none when it comes to the actual scoping portion. And as far as the scan tool portion with the graphing and the speeds, they're definitely top tier. They even beat the Altels. They even beat the Launches. You can ask a lot of the diagnostic guys out there. They're going to tell you the same exact thing. So for that, I don't consider it a wasted purchase, but it is one thing that I am making payments towards, and I don't look at it any differently than I do my Kawasaki. So for that, it's an investment in my future. Maybe one day the thing's paid off and I start getting more and more clients coming in for diagnostic work, or I start getting better at diagnostic work, or somebody's willing to actually teach me how to diagnose a vehicle utilizing my tool. Either way, I now have it. It's mine, and no one can tell me what I can do with it. I can take it to work, I can leave it at home, I can do whatever I want to do with it. It's mine. I paid for it, right? But going back to the actual basic hand tools, as far as buying cheap to going towards expensive, yeah, man, look, there's a lot of hand tools that you can buy, and the cheapest of the cheap, some of them are going to work out, a lot of them are not. If you go to the mid-range, a lot of them are going to work out, some of them are not. If you go to the high end, a lot of them are going to work out, but it's going to cost you a lot of dang money. And you have to decide if that purchase is worthwhile, and more so with your hours, with your commissional bonuses, with however much you're making, can you justify the purchase, and can you pay it back or pay it off in a timely manner if you're putting it on credit? If you're paying for it in cash, are you willing to actually eat the amount now in hopes that it pays itself off within the next month or two? Like, you have to decide that. I can't decide that for you. But there are certain things that I would prefer in a Snap-on lineup, even still. But there are a lot of things that I won't touch from Snap-on. And a lot of those things that I feel like that I know that are rebranded, a lot of those things when it comes down to sockets and stuff like that, yeah, I'm going to go a different direction. Even when it comes to ratchet wrenches, right? But if I'm specifically buying, like I said, wrenches that I want to use the open end on, I'm not going to go with anyone else. But that's been my experience. That's my way of justifying it to myself, and I understand exactly what it is that I'm getting out of it. As far as their cordless stuff goes, look, you know, yeah, Milwaukee is a fantastic product. Okay, the torque is there for the most part. I have a buddy of mine, his name is Nick from Let's Drift Media. Just did a video showing the 1/4-inch Milwaukee cordless long reach versus the Snap-on long reach and the 1/4-inch. You can clearly see he's going through the same exact struggles that I did when I had Milwaukee. Okay, a lot of those struggles had to do with the fact that it said it could do one thing, but then it couldn't, whereas the other one can. Unless you get a run and go at it, and then in that case it works, right? And then when it comes to other tools that Milwaukee has, the things that everyone keeps forgetting about is that though you may not have had any battery issues yet, give it time, because you will. The battery slop, the broken ears on the batteries that keep themselves in there, the connectivity issues, the paddle switch, the flush design, which could be a good thing, but most likely a bad thing, because you can't switch it if you get pinned against the side of the firewall. The big oversized head, like, there's a lot of things to dislike about the product, and the very few things that you have to like is it's comfortable, it has the torque, it has the battery fast charge time, and it has a fuel indicator. Cool, but there's a lot of negatives too. Okay, and when it comes to some of the other products that are out there, they're oversized, they're too big, they're too bulky for the automotive technician. So then you're left to like trying to dissect between the Pro Series lineups like Snap-on, Matco, Cornwell, etc. Okay, let's take Snap-on and Matco. You saw what happened. The Matco was a piece of crap. Snap-on did what it said it was going to do. We tried out the Earthquake XT cordless ratchet. If I would have broke it loose, could I run it out? Sure. But did it break the fastener loose at the specified torque value it said it could? No. I'm not going to pay for something like that if it can't do what's on the dang label. End state is this. It is a building block. It is a staircase, okay? If you can't afford it right now, that doesn't mean you can't afford it later. So even when it comes to this last thing that we talked about, which was the Earthquake XT, if you cannot afford to spend $250 to $300 on a dang Snap-on cordless, but you can get a battery, a charger, and a tool for $100 from Harbor Freight with a discount code, go that route. Crack it loose, run it out, and keep doing that over and over and over until the tool breaks down and you've made your money and then some on it, because it still moves faster than you can by hand. Is it faster than air? No. But are you always going to be in a position where you can drag hose everywhere? No. So a cordless tool is definitely going to be beneficial for you here. But if you can't afford the top tier, don't buy the top tier. Start off at the bottom and work your way up. Whether it's made in China, Taiwan, US, it don't make no matter to me. What matters to me is what can I afford at that point in time based on my income, and then what can I afford later, right? You can always upgrade later, and that tool is not dead. You can bring it home, use it DIY, or you can sell it. It's up to you. So it's not a dead tool to where you couldn't possibly recoup some of the money you spent on it. And it's not a dead tool to the point where you couldn't bring it home and use it for other things. Okay, but you now have started somewhere to get yourself somewhere else. That's all I got for this video, guys. Look, I hope this video made sense to you guys. I just want to throw some perspective on this as far as like what I learned from buying cheap tools versus expensive tools. There's definitely a time, there's definitely a place, there's definitely an income, right? Buy what you can afford in the beginning, work your way up. Go to the mid-range, then slowly but surely, if you feel like you need a replacement, then go to the high range. But if your cheap tools are still holding up, don't bother buying the mid-range, don't bother buying the high. If your cheap tools break down, then go to the mid-range. If the mid-range is holding up, then don't bother buying the high end and don't go back to the low end, okay? And then try to base some of your tool budget and things that you're buying based off of that and what you can afford and how they've held up and your experience with them, okay? Because your experience might be different than mine. You might utilize that tool differently than I do. I try to utilize it as a heavy line mechanic, and I put it through a lot of extensive testing. I beat the hell out of my crap. And if it works, it works. If it don't, it don't. That's all I got for this video, guys. Thanks so much for watching my channel. Cheers to those of you that have beers. We'll see you next time. Deuces.